I just had the audacity. That's what I always tell people. You just need to have the audacity and the confidence and the trust in yourself to like really go after what you want and just say like, no, I'm doing this. I'm like, okay, I'm working 60 hours a week just to try and make ends meet. I'm freaking tired. My body hurts. Like, seems delusional, but like, should I just quit? Like, I don't know. Like I feel like I could do this, but I didn't expect to go the route that I went. I was broke as shit. In my head, I was like, I'm gonna pursue this content creation stuff, and I'm just gonna work a whatever job and kind of have that job fund my dreams until my dreams fund my life, basically.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Tool for Rise podcast, aka the #1 podcast in Winnipeg, where we document the rise and stardom of Winnipeg's talent and personalities. Turns out 84.3% of people listening to this episode are not subscribed. So if you gain any piece of value from this episode, please hit the subscribe button. It gives us, you and me, a reason to continue doing this show and put the city on the map. Today we have Tayler Francisco on the episode to talk about the world of social media and how she grew her social media agency from 0 to 6 figures in just 2 years. She talks about the world of social media, how to get involved from starting out and making vlogs to making a full-blown business and selling courses. If you gain any piece of value from this episode, again, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you next week. We were talking just before we started recording that this is your world. You know, we're not worried about you having conversations. Like, you have conversations all the time.
I do.
If you had to describe what you do in like a short little blurb, what would that be? What's your role? What is
Like with my podcast or just in general?
in general? What do you? Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a social media coach and I teach my students how to make sales on Instagram. That's really like the shortest way I can describe it.
Nice.
I'm also a content creator and the host of the Tiny Moments podcast.
Yeah. This is actually the first time we've had another podcast host
Oh, no way.
on the show.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be great. Talk to me about where this world started for you in social media. How did you figure out how to use social media and let alone convert that to become a business, right?
Yeah, so back in the day, I don't know if you guys ever watched YouTubers, but like back in like 2008, I was kind of going through a tough time. Like my parents just split, and my like where I found comfort was watching YouTubers. And it never crossed my mind like, oh, I could do this one day, but I just found so much comfort in watching them. And I remember like slowly over the years, I'm like, oh, that's crazy. They get paid to do this. It's crazy. They get brand deals. I want PR packages. Like I want to film cute videos and get paid for it. Right. But I didn't, there was no concept of like, this is possible for me. And also too, like all the YouTubers I watched were like in LA or just in the States or other places. I'm like, I'm from Winnipeg, like whatever. But then slowly while I was in university, I was kind of like, you know what? I really want to vlog. And like, I just have this really, I guess, kind of loud personality. So I'm like, you know what? I feel like I could do it. So when I was in university, I just started vlogging and I just kind of started researching like, okay, how do I actually make money? And at the time it was like, okay, if you hit 1,000 subscribers, you can monetize, and then it kind of starts that way. So I always thought that was going to kind of be like the path. And then I realized too that there's opportunity on Instagram. So I kind of just started doing that. And I have an English major, like I was in university at the time. I'm like, you know what? I think I could figure out how to pitch to brands. And so really it just kind of started there, but I didn't expect to go the route that I went because I feel like I just had this kind of one-track mindset of like, okay, if I'm going to make money from social media, it's going to be me as a content creator. And I just didn't realize that I could do social media management or coaching. And yeah, that's a whole other story. But that's kind of how I got into this world.
And the social media world is not an easy world to be in, especially let alone YouTube vlogging is a whole different world.
Yeah.
Talk to me about those initial vlogs that you made at university. What were those like?
Well, honestly, I was just like, let me just fuck around and find out. Like, let me just be myself and whatever. So we were just filming like lifestyle vlogs. And I just really loved it. And to be honest, everyone always says like, oh, editing's so hard, but I loved it. And actually, I don't know if I've even talked about this on my social media yet, but back in grade 10, we were in like driver's ed and we had this assignment. I don't know if we were all supposed to make videos, but my friend and I, we made a video about like drunk driving. And in the video, she like drives and hits me. She doesn't actually hit me, but whatever, we acted it out. And I just realized then like, oh, I love editing videos. So I feel like now that I'm saying this out loud, I feel like that's where it came from. But the first couple vlogs are really just like for funsies. And I literally used iMovie to edit it, which is like a little ghetto, but whatever. And yeah, I just threw it up and I grew to like almost 1,000 subscribers. I ended up stopping and I honestly want to relaunch it at some point in 2024. So that might be coming. But yeah, that's kind of how the first couple videos went. It was just very chill.
Who were your inspirations back then? Because I know when I was, what, like 12 years old or whatever in grade, I wouldn't be 12 years old in grade 10 anyway. But when I was in grade 10, I was watching like Roman Atwood. I was watching, I don't know who else, like FouseyTube, like Logan Paul come up, like all those other,
really?
all those
Such
other
guy YouTubers.
Come on. We're watching, what's her name? Rachel someone?
Rachel.
Oh, there's a
Which one?
there was a makeup artist.
Who'd you watch? Jenna Marbles. Jenna Marbles.
I do know Jenna Marbles.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was watching really girly ones. I don't know if you're gonna know, but like It's Judy's Life, Sophia Chang, Whaley, That's Heart. Really girl. You probably weren't watching them, but they were doing like Bath and Body Works hauls and like makeup stuff. Bethany Moda also, who's now dating I don't remember. Whatever. An Asian guy he's a dancer.
Did you like kind of treat that as like your study phase, whereas like you know what you were interested in now, right? And so you're gonna try to mimic that and almost use that as like a guide to, because you know what works, right? Like you know what got you interested in watching those videos. How do you replicate that?
For me, I was really just like, okay, I remember like grade 8 Tayler. She was so sad. I was like, she was in her room. She was just connecting. So I wanted to feel like whoever's watching is actually just hanging out with me, like sitting down, having a coffee, or like directly connecting with me. And those are all the types of messages I got when I first started. Like, I remember this one girl, she's from LA. We're friends now. And it was so crazy to me because she randomly reached out and she's like, hey, I love your vlogs. Like, you remind me of Sophia and Whaley, which are like two of my idols. She would never know that. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, I made it. I did it. But like, that was really cool. And now like whenever we go to LA, we always meet up with her. We're still friends now. That was like many years ago, like 7 years ago. So yeah, that's really how I wanted it to feel. It's just like sitting down with a bestie.
And especially at the beginning, those small wins of like acknowledgement. Hey, like, here's 3 likes on a video. Here's 10 likes on a video.
Yeah.
Those mean the world because they proof of concept. It tells you, hey, listen, not the whole world might not be watching just yet, but some people are. What was one of your first wins that you got that got you maybe like hooked that you remember? You mentioned the fan or the friend to know.
Yeah, I would say that was it, to be honest. Just like all of those types of messages. And then I think like my first brand deal where I actually got paid, or like even when I started getting gifted stuff, I was like, holy shit, like I'm getting PR packages. What the hell? Yeah, so I think that was kind of it where it clicked. And then that's where I really started researching like, okay, how do I make money when I'm not necessarily making it just off of the views? Like I don't have 1,000 subscribers yet. Like how else can I do this? So that's kind of where all of that started for me.
That's interesting. A lot of people in grade 10 are not doing brand deals, right? And then
I wasn't in grade 10.
Right.
I was in like first year university, but I was starting to like kind of think about these things in grade 10. So like the video that I made, but I just didn't really put 2 and 2 together at that time.
Yeah. What's the process of getting a brand deal? I'm so curious. Like, you just be like, hey, here's my YouTube channel. Here's how many subscribers I have. Let me pitch to my audience, or how do you pitch the brands? Yeah,
so that was kind of like, I mean, that is still a thing, like the influencer kind of marketing. So, and that's actually what I teach inside my creator course, shameless plug. But how you pitch to brands is basically you just do your research and see like, okay, who do you want to work with, right? And then you can look for smaller brands too. So like if you're like, okay, I love Nike, Nike might not pay attention to you yet, but finding other kind of like athleisure brands, whatever. So just do your research on that. And then you just literally send them an email and say like, hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. I love your brand because, and then you kind of pitch yourself. And then there's 2 ways you can kind of do it. So one, as an influencer, where you're pitching, okay, like you're going to reach my audience. So that's good for people who have an existing audience. And then now there's also UGC, which is user generated content, where they just are paying you for like good content and they're not trying to reach your audience. You actually don't even have to post it. They're going to use it for paid ads or for organic reach, whatever. So those are kind of the 2 ways. I personally like UGC now because it's just so much easier. Like you don't have to worry about your audience, but if you do have a large audience, and obviously like utilize that too. But yeah.
Well, the difference between maybe like when you first started versus now is that short form aspect.
Yeah.
Right? A bunch of the UGC that you see is short form, correct?
Yeah.
In that realm, whereas when the vlogs, much more long form, longer videos, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, however long, I don't know what the vlogs are, but you see that little shift in going from long form to sit down with me, get to know me fully as a person. to, okay, this is how I can get your attention in the most short period of time with the most amount of dopamine, with the coolest sound effect. What's that transition like?
Well, I think you just got it exactly. This is like what I always explain to people because there is still a place for long form content. Obviously, we're doing this right now.
Yeah.
This is long form content. YouTube is long form content. That's really a way to like create a super loyal fan base or customer base is like through those mediums. But you're right, you got to capture the attention. So the short form content is really important for just that. Like, how do you just hook people? I kind of see Instagram and TikTok as like a way to hook people. And then your stories, your longer form content, your podcast, your YouTube, like that's where you can really like warm up your audience if you're selling something. And if you're not even just like creating that community, right?
Yeah. Did it ever get tiring at any point? Like, you know, being a university student, it's hard. You got so many lives to balance. You got so many hats to wear. Whereas now you're doing this extra thing that you don't necessarily have to do, but you love doing it, right? Did it ever get difficult where you were like, maybe I don't want to do it anymore?
I would say yes. Like, of course, right? Anything that you're doing can get tiring, even if you love it. But I would say what really happened for me was I realized like I didn't want to do what I was in university for anymore.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where the exhaustion came in, where I'm like, well, number one, like I had someone in my family who was sick, so I was caring for them. I was working like 60 hours a week. My grandma had just passed away. It was like a lot. I was in full-time university, and then I was doing all of this kind of on the side. And that's when I realized like, oh, I actually like teaching, because that's what I was in school for originally. Like, it's not bringing me joy anymore. I don't enjoy going to practicum. I don't enjoy my classes, but this YouTube thing, this creating content, like I do enjoy it. So I would say that's like where the exhaustion came in. I would say now, like, and obviously now I'm way beyond just a content creator. I have a business, but I would say now the struggle is kind of like, sometimes for me, I can't turn it off. Because like you guys probably know, if you're creative and you're creating content and you're creating content for your business, that's where I feel like it gets a little sticky because like, you know, when I was in university or like a server, I could clock in and clock out. Like once I left, peace out. Like I'm not thinking about it. But now as a business owner and a creative, sometimes it's like fucking midnight on a Saturday. I'm like, oh my God, I have this idea for a reel. Like, I guess I'll go write it down. And now like I have better boundaries of like, I'm not going to get in the rabbit hole and sit on my laptop for another hour. But in the beginning, especially, I would. And it would be, like I said, a Saturday night. And I'm like, I'm just going to do this thing real quick. And he, like, Glenn, I'm pointing at Glenn in the background. I'm like, he knows that it's not going to be a minute. It's going to be an hour and a half later. It's going to be 1 a.m. I'm going to be cranky after. But yeah, it is what it is. That's what I would say is like the hard part now.
That's the best part, though. Like when you have an idea, honestly, I love it. Because if you don't write it down, that good of an idea just goes. It goes, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't write it down, I always try to either do it on my notes or I try to write it down on my hands or something. But I remember one time where I think I was almost falling asleep and like, and I'm like, no, I'm so comfy right now. I have to get up. Yeah, that's the journey that we live for, right? I think it's like, it really makes it worth it at the end of the day.
And it's one of those things, like, if you know, you know. So I know you know because, sometimes you'll be laying in bed. It's like, oh, fuck, I'm so hungry. But I'm going to get up anyway. Because, it's like, if you have a download, you're having it for a reason. And I know, at least for me, like, I can't force myself to feel creative. I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it. But in those moments, I do have a long list in my notes of just like, it's called content ideas. And then it's all just there. And then I have one that's podcast ideas, like email ideas. 100%. Oh my God. But at least in those moments, then it's like, oh, okay, I can just pull anything. Right?
Exactly.
And I think so many people can relate. Like content ideas, podcast, we got the same list. And they're just loaded up. Because you realize that, yes, you can, in the university, in the working jobs, in the 8 to 5s, you can turn it off. But once you become an entrepreneur, once you become in this creative world, it's 24/7.
Yeah, and we always see this post where it's like, you left your 9 to 5 to work 24/7 for yourself. Like, that's kind of it. I mean, now, like, again, I am really learning. Like, obviously, now I'm 2 years into my business, so I have better boundaries, but it was a learning curve. And I think it's going to be a lifelong learning curve, if I'm being honest, because, again, if you're the business owner, that means you're really passionate about it, and it's you. So for me, at least, like, I have had a hard time separating it. Now I'm very much like working on like, okay, my worth is not tied to my productivity. I am not my business, and I kind of am, but like, just kind of trying to figure that out.
Well, it's like a baby, right? Like it's like raising a baby, quite literally. You built this thing from nothing to something, or to what it is today, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not living up to that potential because we're chasing that ideal, the next person of ourselves. And if we're not living up to that potential, it's like, oh shit, like, I don't know, I'm doing something wrong. Or you feel guilty about it.
Yeah, you can feel it because you know, like we know what our highest versions of ourselves are.
Yep.
So once you know that, it's kind of hard to not always be working towards that or trying to step into that.
What was the conscious decision of going from, okay, I enjoy making content to now let's make it a business? Was there like a specific moment, something came in, a brand package came in, something that really flipped the switch to be like, okay, now I'm going to do this in the business side?
Yeah, so when I was 22, I was like super depressed. Like I could not, I just knew like, okay, I cannot keep doing this.
Can I ask why?
It was just a lot. Like I had just been through a lot in my life. I had a really rough childhood and it was all kind of just coming down on me. I also like had been in 3 car accidents. I had a bunch of dance injuries, and the one thing at the time that was, well, 2 things that were bringing me joy is creating content and dancing, but I had to stop dancing 'cause the chronic pain was just a lot. So there was just a lot going on. And I also knew, just like you said, like I knew that my highest self was not doing what I was doing. I'm like, okay, I'm working 60 hours a week just to try and make ends meet. I'm freaking tired. My body hurts. Like, I don't even like teaching anymore because honestly, no shade towards children, but kind of shade towards children. It was a lot. Like, it was a lot. So I knew like, okay, I'm very unhappy. And I like literally had a near death moment. And that's when I kind of woke up. It was literally like that moment of awakening where I'm like, I need to just go after my happiness. I need to just do what brings me joy because this is not it, and nothing else is more important than your health. You know, like at that point I'm like, yeah, okay, I can make some money and maybe, you know, I can become a teacher and get a salary and like maybe be comfy and have summers off, but like I just knew I'm like, this is not it. And I felt like I was just kind of on a hamster wheel. Like, let me just step off. So I decided that year that I was gonna quit teaching. And that was like in the winter. So I decided like, okay, I'll go until the end of June, just finish up here. And then Glenn and I moved into our first apartment. I was jobless. I was on EI. I didn't know what the hell I was going to do, but I just knew like, okay, I'm going to figure it out because I've been through so much hard shit already. Like this career stuff, being jobless, like I can handle that. So we moved into our place, and then I was like, okay, let me just find some minimum wage job, whatever. Because in my head, I was like, I'm going to pursue this content creation stuff, and I'm just going to work a whatever job and kind of have that job fund my dreams until my dreams fund my life, basically. Wow. So obviously things didn't go exactly that way, but I started working at Orange Theory because I was like, well, I like dancing, I like fitness, maybe this will be like fun for me. So I started working there as a sales associate, and it was a big pay cut. Like I like as a teacher, because I was a paid intern at the time, I was getting paid like $25 an hour, and then I would also do like lunch duty, which is like a little bit extra. But at Orange Theory, it was like minimum wage. So I don't know what it was back then, maybe like $13 or $14 an hour. It's like, oh shit. Okay, well this is real. But even with the pay cut, I was so much happier because I wasn't forcing myself to go into a job that I hated. I wasn't like putting on a mask and pretending like I'm fine. And I also knew that now that I didn't have like that energy being drained from me, I'd be able to kind of focus on YouTube and creating content. So that's what I did for like a year. And then I think it was like after a year, and COVID had already hit. So we had already been in like one lockdown. I think it was after that we thought like, oh, things are going to be open again forever. And the owner of Orange Theory at the time, she was like, hey, do you know how to do like social media? And it was weird because prior to this, like my coworker and I, she had told me that she took a social media manager course. She was kind of talking about it. And in my head, I'm like, I wonder if I could do something like that. Like, I don't know what I'm doing, but like maybe I could. And then the owner came to me and she's like, you're really good at creating content. Like, it seems like you know what you're doing. I'm like, yeah. She's like, do you know how to do social media management? I said, yeah, of course I do. I had
Live for this stuff.
I had no idea. But again, I was like, okay, I've practiced like the art of trusting myself and figuring this shit out. Because like I said, we moved in together. I was jobless. I figured that out. So I'm like, you know what? If she's asking for this, I can figure it out. So she's like, okay, can we meet on Monday? And this was on a Friday. She asked me that. And I was like, sure. So I went home that Friday and I was like, okay, I'm going to invest in this social media manager course. I was broke as shit. I had $1,400 in the bank. and I spent $1,100 on this course. I was like, okay, I'm gonna create like a pitch and I'm gonna bring it to her on Monday. And then I brought it to her on Monday and she said yes. And I pitched her to pay $800 a month. So I was like, holy shit, she said yes. This is crazy. So then whatever, we started and we ended up doing this like photo shoot. And I started doing their marketing and everything was going great. And I was like, okay, I feel like I'm good at this. Like, this is really fun. And also I was like, I can make an extra $800 like on top of getting paid minimum wage. But I was like, this makes it so worth it. And then COVID hit again, the second lockdown or the third, I don't even know at this point, one of the lockdowns. Yeah. And then they basically were like, hey, like, we really love working with you, but like, we're closed. So we can't, like, there's nothing for you to market. And also there's no one paying us, so we can't pay you. So I was like, fuck, like, you know, what now? So again, that happened on a Friday. Over the weekend, I was kind of like just thinking, okay, what can I do now? And I thought, well, if she was willing to pay me that much, who's to say that another business won't also do it? Thinking back now, I'm like, I had some audacity because I literally had like 2 weeks of experience, right? But I was also like, okay, well, I made $800 back, but I'm still short. Like whatever. So let me figure this out. So over that weekend, I created a portfolio, like literally just on Canva. It was so trash, but I created this portfolio and then I just started cold pitching like people who were kind of in my network. So I guess sort of warm, but just randomly being like, hey, this is what I'm doing now. Do you need a social media manager? I also announced on my Instagram so officially like, hey, I'm officially a social media manager with 2 weeks of experience. Just left that part out. And by Monday I landed my first client. And it was just so crazy. So then that like really snowballed into like, okay, I can do this for myself. So once I realized that, I was doing it during the lockdown and there was talks of like things opening up again. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to go back to Orange Theory because now like I'm doing this, but I wasn't making enough or like I wasn't making the same amount that I would have working full time at Orange Theory. I was kind of like, like this seems delusional, but like, should I just quit? Like, I don't know. Like I feel like I could do this. And I knew too. So I came back to work and it had been like a week. So I'm working like, you know, full time. I'm like, it's taking so much energy. Like I can't focus on this. And I know like if I start posting on social media, like I could really blow this up, but like I don't have the capacity because I'm working. So I ended up being like, can you reduce me to part-time? And I had no financial backing. Like we do not come from rich families. Like there's nothing to lean on here except for my credit card, which I have never done. Like I never at that point had ever put anything on my card that I couldn't afford. So I was like, I don't want to do that. But I just trusted myself and I went after it. And then I never went back to Orange Theory because I ended up making way more doing what I'm doing now. So yeah, that's the really long answer to whatever you asked me. I don't remember.
The transition.
Yes, okay, yeah.
Wow, that's takes a lot of courage. Right? Especially when you say you don't come from the money, especially I want to break down the one specific decision in that story of I have $1,400 in my bank account. I'm gonna spend $1,100 on a course. That specific decision. Why and what drove you towards that?
I think for me, it was just like I said, I've been through some shit in my life and I did not come from money. Like it was to the point when I was a kid, we were so poor. I didn't really know, but like sometimes the electricity bill would get cut or like I knew we lived in an apartment and not a house. We took the bus, you know, we didn't have a car. We never went on family trips, that sort of thing. And then in university, there was so many times where like I didn't even have money for food. So I was hungry, trying to write exams, my stomach's growling. Like my friends would bring me food to school because they knew. Or like if I was really like going through it, I'm like, I just need a matcha from Starbucks. I would have to check my bank account and make sure, you know what I mean? So like coming from all of that and so much just like hardship in my life, this to me felt like kind of lower stakes because I'm like, I've already been through like I don't want to say the worst, but like the worst out of my life. So I'm like, you know what? If I spend money on this and like it doesn't work out, it's not going to be the hardest thing I've ever had to go through. And I also think, I don't want to say I was like desperate to step into my purpose, but kind of like I had this deep knowing, this like intuitive knowing, like I just know it's right. There's nothing logical that I can say to back this up, but it just feels right. And again, I was like just starting to be on that journey of learning how to trust myself. And at that point too, I realized like every time I had gone against what I was truly feeling or gone against my intuition, that's when things got fucked up. So I was like, you know what? Let me just do this. I got to trust myself. So that was really the decision, to be honest. Obviously, I talked to Glenn about it because I don't want to just, and he was like, I trust you, you know, like, and I had kind of proven myself time and time again through different situations that like I can do hard things. And we can all do that. Like every single one of us on earth, we've all had terrible experiences. We've all survived 100% of the hard things we've been through. So for me, I was just like, I'm going to survive this too, regardless. And I just kind of knew.
We talk about this a lot, off camera, on camera, but we like to say it's the perspective settings. And it's like, look, you've already been at your lowest, right? And it's now when you compare that to where you are now, that decision probably wasn't as hard. It's a difficult decision, right? Like when you got $400 left in the bank account, you got rent to pay, you got food to put on the table, right? It's a hard decision, but like Robin said, it takes a lot of courage, right, to invest in yourself and invest in your potential. So that's great. I want to read you the DM that you sent to us. I think this is a perfect time to do so. I asked you for your bio, right?
Yes.
And as soon as I kind of read this, I was like, Robin, we're gonna have this is gonna be a good deep conversation, and I'll just read it to you. Because I honestly feel like sometimes when I type stuff out and I send it to people, it doesn't really hit. But when someone reads it back to you, you're like, holy shit, like that's me. So you go, my name is Tayler Francisco. I am a social media coach, content creator, and a host of the Tiny Moments podcast. I grew my business from 0 to beyond 6 figures in 2 years, and now I help entrepreneurs, creatives, and business owners show up authentically online and make sales on Instagram inside my signature program, Instagram Growth Academy. From a childhood marked by poverty to navigating through mental health challenges, chronic pain, and a career crisis, my story is one of resilience and determination. I emerged from the darkest moments prioritizing self-care, pivoting to entrepreneurship. I took myself from despair to success as I built a thriving business from the scratch in my 20s.
Shit, it does sound way more badass when you read it.
Take me through that. That's you kind of hit up all those topics, but yeah, like growing from nothing to building something, it's a story that you don't get to tell often. And I'm so glad that you're sharing it. But talk me through the moments of the dark time where, you know, maybe you didn't have food on the table. What was that like?
It was dark. It was not fun, I'll tell you that. I think at that time I was just really like, I was in a victim mindset where I'm like, okay, this is how I grew up. This is what I've seen. This is what's happened to me. Obviously now I believe everything's happened for me. But back then I'm like, okay, these are just the cards I was dealt. Like, too bad, so sad, whatever. This is my life. And I kind of just always thought like, okay, my grandma struggled, my mom struggled, I'm going to struggle. Like, this is just how it is. This is how I was like born. Like, this is just what it's going to be. And so in those moments, it was very much just like, I felt just kind of hopeless. I'm like, fuck, like, are these really just the cards I got dealt? Like, really, it doesn't get any better than this? And, you know, it was really hard, especially to like taking care of my sick family member, like having to take so much on financially, like that responsibility. And also to like, just my parents, they never got along. They had quite an awful relationship, to be honest. And I was really close with my mom. I'm really close with both my parents now. And it's kind of water under the bridge now. But back then I just felt very personally responsible to make sure that like my mom was good, or just to make sure like, you know, she would say things like, you're my rock. And she was not trying to like put that on me, but I made it mean that like, oh, I need to keep my shit together. Like, I need to always be that person. And like, I was kind of just like that in my friend group too. So I just felt like I never got to be the victim, or like no one ever felt sorry for me. So then I was just kind of like craving that. So I made myself a victim, and I just kind of lived in that darkness. And yeah, like there was moments where like I would be teaching at a school and we would do like Christmas hampers, like, you know, those fundraisers, and fill up, you know, canned goods. And like I would be receiving one at home and they didn't know, but I would take my students to go, you know, volunteer and fill up the boxes. Meanwhile, I'm probably filling up like my own box, you know, like it was crazy. So yeah, it was just really dark. And then, you know, trigger warning, self-harm. I don't know where you guys put that, but yeah, like there was just one night, I was 22. I'm like, fuck this. Like, I just can't do this anymore. And it wasn't even that I like necessarily wanted my life to end. I just wanted life as I knew it to stop, because I'm like, this is too much. Like, I'm exhausted. I have no time for anything. I don't even really know what joy feels like anymore. I was also like just experiencing a lot of like physical chronic pain. And I just didn't see a way out. So that was again like that kind of turning point for me. And when I ended up in the hospital, actually prior to me even getting there, my best friend brought me, and the doctor, I literally heard them say like, if you had gotten here 8 minutes later, your friend would be dead. So for me, that was the first time that I just had like stillness, and they're like, okay, you need to be off work. Like, you're going to stay a couple nights. And I was like, oh my God, I actually don't have to do anything. Like, this is crazy. And then, yeah, that was just the turning point for me, where I just had that epiphany of like, what am I doing? You know? And then that was also when I realized like, maybe I actually have a choice.
Yeah.
You know, like maybe I don't just have to say I got dealt these cards and it is what it is. Maybe I start dealing my own cards. Maybe I start, you know, choosing how I want to show up and choosing how I want to feel and choosing to take care of myself. Because I think it was just like, I grew up with strong women, like my mom and my grandma, who are very much like, I'm going to do everything myself. I'm independent. I don't need help from anyone. So I think for me, I was kind of adopting that same mindset of like not even letting people in who probably wanted to be there. Actually, they did want to be there. And I just like didn't know how to do that. So that was also the moment I realized like, you know what? It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to accept help and love. And yeah, that's really where it all kind of shifted for me. But that's kind of that dark chapter. And then afterwards, obviously healing is not linear, you know, like healing kind of goes like this, right? And it's also a lifelong thing too for all of us, because we've all been through shit. But yeah, that's kind of how the dark part went.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
thank you for sharing.
was
First of
gonna
all, like that's it's not easy to talk about, right? And you having the courage to even speak about that, it means a lot, especially on our show too. Like,
Yeah, of course.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
When just to touch on it a little bit, but what were some of the happy moments during there, or was there any happy moments at all?
Like during the healing or during like the dark?
During the dark time, what did you look forward to, if there was anything, or was there a part of you that said, hey, listen, this may not be the life I want to live. I want to do everything in my power to get out of that.
I mean, there's definitely happy moments, right? Like I like have great friends. I have a great boyfriend. We're still together. You know, there was definitely great moments, and like being able to dance and like connect with my friends, and like I said, content creation too. A lot of those things brought me joy, but it was kind of like at that time, it was just like glimpses. So like I would kind of like how I would picture it is like you're in a dark room and there's like a flash.
Got it.
You know, sometimes, or like the sun would come out for like 5 seconds and then it would be gone. But I did have those glimpses, and I think like it was after that whole thing that I went through that I was like, okay, maybe those glimpses that I'm having, like maybe I could have them more often, or like maybe I can actually just create something better. And I think too, from a young age, I would always tell my mom, like, and she told me this, actually, I don't even remember fully, but she always said, I told her like, I'm gonna be famous. Whatever that means, right? I didn't even know why or how, but I would say things like that, or I would say like, Mom, one day I'm gonna buy you a house, or like one day we're gonna live in a house. I had no concept of how, but I think from a young age I just knew like I was meant for more. So yeah, in those moments and like during healing, I just kind of knew like, okay, I'm meant for more, and if these people can do it, like why not me? You know, or why can I not at least try? So
the reason I ask is because when you signed your first client and your second client, what was that happiness like?
Well, to be honest, it came with a little bit of heaviness. Like it was mostly optimistic. Like I would say like 90% of it was like, holy shit, like I'm onto something, like let's go. But there was 10% of me that was like kind of feeling like an imposter. I remember even being like, ooh, like, do I have to tell them I don't have a marketing degree? Like, do I have to, like, I don't know, I didn't go to school for this, like, you know. And also I kind of was like, is the rug gonna get pulled out from under me at some point? Because I started making money and I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna make more than I did at Orange Theory. But then I'm like, but if one client leaves, then what? Or like, you know, I just kept thinking like, oh, what happens if? And I would kind of go to worst case scenario in my brain, as like most humans, right? It's kind of normal. But I think for me, it was just like, there's a lot of excitement and also a lot of imposter syndrome, also a lot of fear around like, okay, what happens if? And then when those things did happen, when because naturally, like you're just gonna have relationships where people come and go, especially in this industry, for whatever reason. And whether that reason was because of my services or because of something, you know, whatever they were going through in their life, I kind of started just learning like, okay, well, there's more where that came from, you know, like thankfully in this industry, like if you have a business, you need social media. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. So you need marketing. So there's always going to be a demand for what I do. And that's kind of where I had to create safety within myself. But yeah, in those moments of like signing those first clients, and even now I still celebrate, because even to this day, I'm like, how do I, like, first of all, the amount of money that you can see in this industry and that I'm able to make, I'm like, dude, I used to make this in a year, you know, or like I used to have to work so many hours, or like, even just small luxuries. When I go to the grocery store or when I go and pick up a coffee, I don't remember the last time I had to check my bank account first, you know? And like those are the little joys for me where I'm like, whoa, like I can just go buy something. I'm obviously gonna look at the price tag, but I could not, you know, and not, it's not gonna mean that I can't pay rent later. You know, it's not to say I'm gonna go be reckless with my money, but it's just those like little freedoms, like that is still really cool to me. And that's like, in the beginning where I was like, whoa, holy shit, like guys, I can go travel, you know, like, yeah.
Right? Those are the moments that you kind of live for. And the reason that we kind of, you know, we're in this is for those, because like when you come from nothing and you get like an apple, like holy shit, that apple is the best thing that you'll ever have in your life. Right. And so it's like, those are the moments that, you know, like, oh, when you got no food on the table and you can walk into a grocery store and pick up whatever you want. And don't have to worry about the bill. Like, thankfully. And it's just like, that's what the hard work is there for, right? That's the dark moments. That's the moment that, you know, where you didn't think you were going to be here, right? And now you're thriving. So,
and I mean, like, to your point, I think that's also a really big driver for me in what I do, because I want to show women, particularly women of color, like, hey, no matter where you come from, like, you can also create a successful business for yourself. You can also be abundant. You can also go after your dreams relentlessly, and like, you can do it, because obviously, like, all of us are special, like, so I don't mean that I'm not special, but like, I'm not any more special than anyone else. I didn't have special circumstances. I'm not like ridiculously smarter than anyone else. Like, I just had the audacity. That's why I always tell people, you just need to have the audacity and the confidence and the trust in yourself to like really go after what you want and just say like, no, I'm doing this. So I think that's another really big driver for me, is just like, I know, and I know because people have messaged me, like, I know there's a lot of like 22-year-old Taylors out there, not literally, but like people who are going through what I was going through. Like, I know they're out there, and I know like if they have just a glimmer of hope, or like they have someone tell them they can do it, or they see someone that looks like them doing that, like that is going to show them that, you know, why not me? Because I remember those moments where I asked myself, like, well, she's doing it, like, why couldn't I? You know, like, if I get to be that person for any women or just anybody, that's the most rewarding part for me.
Talk to me about the growth of the business, of going from, you know, 0 to 6 figures, and in the time span that you did. What was that growth like?
Yeah, honestly, and it's crazy because when I talk to like my financial advisor, she's like, you grew really fast. I'm like, are you sure? Because like, I don't know, I guess online sometimes we see like all these really young millionaires and whatever. It's very easy to compare yourself. But the reality is I did grow pretty quickly. And I think for me, again, it really just all had to do with my audacity of like, okay, you know, at first I knew how to take clients from point A to point C, right? I did not know how to take them from A to Z, but I was like, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to get there. But I think one thing for me and why I was able to grow that quickly is because I was very much like, I'm not going to wait until I'm perfect. I'm not going to wait until I feel like, you know, a top-notch expert. I'm just going to meet people where they are, because no matter what, like, they need something that I have. Even if, and you know, if they're going to go to another agency because they want the full A to Z package, cool, that's fine. That's not me yet, but I know there's people who will meet me here who have a smaller budget, because at the time I wasn't charging a lot. I was charging like $400 a month for social media management, which like, I know now, like my smallest package would be $2,500, you know? So yeah, at the time, I was just comfortable meeting people where they were. And I was also very committed to continuing to learn, continuing to perfect my craft so that I could charge more, continuing to always work on my business, continuing to like think of ways that I could grow and be creative. And also too, just think of ways for me to have multiple streams of income, like content creation, right? Getting brand deals, coaching, social media management, collaborations, different things, speaking engagements eventually, like this year. So things like that. I was like, let me diversify this a bit. But I would say like the turning point was when I finally felt like, okay, I'm really creating results for my clients. Like I'm creating tangible results, not only in their followers and their views, but also in their sales and just the way that they interact with me. Like the things they would say, like, oh my God, I'm so happy. Like I love, you know, looking at my content calendar now, it doesn't stress me out. That's when I started thinking, okay, how can I leverage this and how can I market it? So what I really did was position myself as an expert, and I actually stopped doing a lot of my educational content because I realized like, oh, if I'm just educating, then I'm creating an audience of like raving fans and not buyers. So I really had to switch my mindset of like, okay, I need to position myself as the expert, and I also need to showcase what the kinds of results I'm providing, right? Video testimonials, like screenshots of insights, all of those things, positioning myself. And then I also did something else that was delusional. So in October of last year, it's just a few months ago, I joined a mastermind, a business mastermind, and I paid $14,000 to be in there.
Damn.
And I also joined a Meta Ads Academy program to learn how to do paid ads because everything I've done so far is organic. So those really changed the game for me. Again, it felt like that moment where I had $1,400 in the bank and I was going to invest $1,100. It very much felt like that because I'm like, this is a lot of money and I'm going to put it on my credit card because who has 20K just lying around ready to, like, you know what I mean? So anyway, that was also a turning point for me because I was like, if I am expecting people to invest in me, I also need to be investing in myself. And what I really think is like, coaches are cheat codes. So I wanted to learn from women who are millionaires, right? Or who have been where I want to go because somehow I created 0 to 6 figures by myself. But now I'm like, okay, I want to step into, you know, higher amounts and just higher growth. So I would say those are like kind of the pivotal moments. And also I would say too, just like for me, there's been so many ups and downs in my business that like, of course I try and be as transparent as possible online, but the reality is like, I'm not going to hop on Instagram stories crying. Like if that's you, cool. But for me, like, I'm not going to do that because if I'm upset, why do I feel like hopping on a story?
You're not going to cry, record it, watch it back, add the filter, and then post it.
I always think like, no shade, but sometimes I'm like, those crying videos, I'm like, were you, anyway.
Sure. The captions, the black and white. Oh, you put some work into this.
Yeah. Were you like, that cry wasn't good enough? Let me try again, you know? Anyway, it just is not me. So as much as like, again, I try to be transparent, there have been a lot of moments in my business where I'm like, oh, fuck, it feels like everything's falling apart, or like, oh, maybe I'm not, you know, doing the right things, or like, you know, maybe I'm not making enough. Like, am I really successful? You know, I've had a lot of those moments. And realistically, like my business is still a baby. It's 2 years old. So I've had a lot of like those growing pains. And I think one thing that I had to realize was like, okay, I grew pretty quickly and I was able to like, and by the way, like 6 figures is not what I keep. That's just like what the business makes. But yeah, but like, okay, if I grew that quickly, right? Because usually like that takes people at least a few years, right? So growing that quickly, it also meant I had all the growing pains that people would usually have in a few years in like 1 or 2 years. So it was like a lot. But again, I feel like the turning point for me was realizing that I needed to hone in on like my expertise as well as a coach, because I think the missing piece for me was that I like my first career was teaching. I'm really good at that. Like I could teach, if I can teach kindergarten kids, I can teach anyone because kindergarten kids are just all over the place, right? So I was kind of like, okay, that really brings me joy. I love speaking. Obviously, I haven't shut up this whole time. I love speaking. I love teaching. Like, let me kind of explore that too. And in January, not this past, but the one before, it got to a point where all of my clients left at the same time. But I knew it was going to happen because, well, for most of them, because they had like grants. There was something going on in Manitoba and all these businesses got grants. So we did like 3 or 6 month terms at the time, and I kind of knew like a lot of them were going to end in like December, January, but then I had a couple leave that I wasn't expecting. And so prior to this, I had booked myself a trip to Arizona, like a solo trip, because I was like, oh, I finally have the luxury of like traveling when I want. Like, let me just book this for myself. Let it be a working vacation. Let me get away for the winter. So I had booked it. And then all my clients left. And I was like, shit, I have to like literally tell my team, like, hey, there's not really much hours besides their commission based stuff. Cause they were also doing like podcast editing and photography, and that was still fine. But the social media management side of things was dry. And I was like, oh, should I not go to Arizona? Like, this feels like the worst time to leave. But when I went, I was like, okay, I think what I need to do, and the missing part of my business is like me, because I think when I first started, I was very much the face of my brand. And then somewhere in there, I launched Melrose Marketing Studio. It wasn't just Taylor Francisco anymore. I was focusing a lot on like highlighting my team and highlighting my services. That I was forgetting that the main selling point was like me and my personality and like me telling stories, because I know how to connect with people really well just naturally. Like, it's not strategic for me, but that was the part that I was kind of missing. So when I went to Arizona, I was like, okay, let me just focus on like creating content for myself, recording some podcasts. I had guests on at the time, like just virtually. And then while I was there, I was like, oh, I should launch a course. Like, I actually know how to become a social media manager. I know how to land clients. I know what, like, how to make contracts. I know how to build a team. Like, why don't I just teach people how to do that? And I was kind of thinking about that for months prior, but I just kept like not having time. Or I don't want to say I don't have time. You always have time, but I didn't want to make more time because I was kind of exhausted. I was doing so much with the agency and growing my team and whatnot. But then in Arizona, again, I finally had stillness. Like, okay, you know what? I'm going to launch this. So I literally posted to my story. I had no curriculum yet. I had nothing made. I didn't know what I was going to film it on. I had no slideshows, no nothing. And I was like, hey guys, I'm launching a social media manager course. Like, message me if you want to get it on the wait list. The wait list filled up. In the first time that I posted it, I was like, oh shit, I guess I got to make this now for real, because like, you know, there was such interest. And then, yeah, I literally like, I completely sold out the program. So I had a limited number of spots. I think I had like 15 spots. I sold it out. I still had people on a wait list. It was going to be like a 4-week live program where I teach once a week. It's recorded on Zoom, whatever. But I had no curriculum. I had nothing. And it was sold out. So then I was like, okay, guys, we're going to start in 2 weeks because I have nothing written down yet. All I really had was like the outline, because I had posted a carousel of like, here's what you get in the 4 weeks. And this was not me being slimy, like, haha, I got your money and I didn't even create anything. It was, again, that pattern of where I'm like, I can figure it out. I know I'm going to do it. And then that's kind of what opened my eyes to like, oh, if I do courses and then, you know, once it's recorded, obviously the live version requires me to show up, but then it's evergreen and then it can be passive income. And then I can promote it whenever and people can buy it and I don't actually have to do anything else. So once I launched that, I also then the next month decided to launch the creator course, which teaches people how to land brand deals, because I knew also how to do that. Same thing. I sold it out before I even had anything done. Both of those months at that point were my biggest months in my business. I made over like 15K from the courses alone each month. And I had never seen that kind of money. I was like, holy shit, I'm onto something here. And then like throughout the next year, I kind of kept getting pulled back and forth between like, should I go all in on courses? Should I just do social media management? Should I try and do both? So obviously I was trying to do both, and I'm going to say something I actually haven't even announced on my socials yet, so you guys get the first exclusive. I'm actually not doing social media management anymore. I decided to go full in on my courses, on my signature program, Instagram Growth Academy, which I launched like back in October, because I just realized I'm like, there's so much opportunity here, because when you figure out in your business how to stop trading your time for money, like that's when you can really be even more abundant. Not to say that social media management can't be, because it absolutely can, but I kind of realized like the only way that I can really scale that is if I grow my team. And to be honest, the desire to grow my team is just like not there. So it's not to say that I'm not going to ever have a team, but that's kind of where things are headed now. And I will say, like, just looking at the numbers, they're going to be way better than they ever were doing the done for you, trading your time for money kind of services. So
Awesome.
thanks for tuning into my TED Talk. That was really long.
You're going from service to product.
Yeah.
Service-based to product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Talk to me about what it felt like when you made the 6 figures. Like, you know, that's a big number, like, to start.
Big number.
Yeah. Like,
It's a very big number.
what did that feeling like? You were like, holy shit, like, let's pop a bottle.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy because like I didn't even realize. And then I had, and this was like a mistake that I made as a business owner, is like I should have been doing like a monthly profit and loss. I should have known exactly what each month was, but I was kind of just flying by the seat of my pants. Thankfully now, like I've learned the lessons. It's only 2 years in, like it's fine. But that moment when I found out is because my bookkeeper was like, hey, here's your numbers for the last year. And I'm like, are you sure?
Oh.
I'm like, am I seeing things correctly? Because I think the previous year I had made 80K, which was still a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I used to make $23,000 a year, you know? So to see that, I was like, that's fucking nuts. Granted, though, like, I will say, especially in my first year, I didn't keep a lot of it because I was kind of just like trying to figure it out, and I was investing a lot. I was paying my team a lot. And that's fine. Like, I needed to learn that lesson. But when I found out, I was like, whoa, I really did that. But when I looked at it, I was also like, okay, my expenses were a little bit higher. So that's why I've kind of been now obviously making the shift to go into coaching, like, and just figure out how I can be more efficient, even increase that number, but also keep more of it.
Yeah.
So like, yes, I did celebrate and I was like really like proud of myself and excited, but I think my entrepreneurial brain was like, okay, now what?
No,
You know, like
yeah.
now, like what's the next milestone and how can you make it more efficient? So honestly, just you asking me that, I'm like, I think I need to celebrate that a little bit more. Because I kind of, I think if you're really ambitious, like you can relate. It's just like, okay, it happens and it's great and you celebrate it, but then it's like, all right, on to the next,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. No, we can 100%, even in this podcast, sometimes we don't take the time that we should to look back
Yeah.
at some of the things that we've either done or said. It's, week to week, but that's the world that we
Yeah.
live in. So
It's fast.
yeah. One thing I wanted to say is just like a full circle moment is you left teaching because you didn't enjoy teaching, but you're going back to teaching
I
courses.
know.
So it's like,
Yeah.
as much as you may have not enjoyed it, but it's coming back to you in some way, shape, or another. So
Well, I think it's different now
It's a different
because obviously teaching in a traditional school setting, there's so many things that I didn't like. I didn't like the 9 to 5 structure. I didn't like sometimes my students be like, Miss Francisco, why are you teaching us this? I'm like, honestly, I wish I knew. I wish I was teaching you how to do your taxes. I
Yeah.
wish I was teaching you how to be a good human and think critically, but I'm not. I'm teaching you why 2 equals X, like whatever.
100%,
You know, so I think
That's important. Come on. You're talking
I
about
mean,
engineer. That's
true.
important.
Yeah, I guess for you.
Come on. It's important.
Yeah, depending on what you're going into, right?
Okay, I'm messing with you.
But I mean, yeah, like of course school is important. And I actually loved being a university student. Like there's so many things I learned, and even to that point, I think like part of me also was like, oh, maybe I'll be a prof one day. And that's still not even off the table for me.
Yeah.
But I just realized that the way that I like to teach was not in that setting. So now it's really rewarding because what I'm realizing now too is like, oh, those things I loved about being a teacher, like seeing that light bulb moment go off in my student's head and like having them realize. I remember one student, she was in grade 7, she said to me, she's like, you make me feel like I'm not stupid. I'm like, because you're not stupid.
Yeah.
You know, it's just you need a teacher that explains it in a way that lands for you. So
Yes,
for me now getting to do this and like I get to coach women who want to start their own business or like make more sales and I get to be part of that journey, like that's so cool. And it brings me so much joy and like that's why it is full circle for me because I'm like, oh, I get to hold on to all the little things that I loved and then not take the rest of it. And I can just decide what that looks like for me. And I think that's an important lesson for anybody who's like, okay, I like certain things out of certain jobs. How can I take those things and create something beautiful for myself?
You're going from teaching because you had to teach versus you're teaching because you want to teach now.
That's it, right? Because it's like if someone tells you to do something and you're like, well, I was already going to do it, but now I don't want to.
That's it.
You know, like that's how it feels. So
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. It's because I want to now.
Yeah, exactly.
And the job's not finished because you still got to buy your mama a house. And
Yeah.
You still got
Period. She's still waiting.
you still got to please that
Yeah.
5-year-old,
Yes.
the 12-year-old, the 22-year-old.
Yeah.
You still got to meet those expectations as well.
Yeah, and I think that's like one thing I want to mention too. Like as much as I do it for my students and people who need that inspiration, I also do it for younger me.
Yeah.
I think all of us can relate. Like there's a smaller version of us that is so happy that we're doing what we're doing now.
Yeah.
So
If you were talking to that younger self of yours, what would you say to her?
I would tell her like shit's gonna get so much better than you can imagine. You're gonna get out of your awkward phase. And that like you can just choose to have a beautiful life. Like that's it. And everything's gonna be okay.
Yeah, I like that.
Any piece of advice that you might have to somebody who might be in your shoes currently? Maybe they're just trying to start their business first couple of years, they're getting started, they want to do marketing, they want to get into the world of social media. What's something you could say to them?
I would say just have the audacity. Just be confident and know what you want and just show up as the version of you that already has that. Because in some time period that version of you does exist. Otherwise you wouldn't see that vision. So just go after it relentlessly and also hire me as your social media coach.
Let's go.
If you were to walk away from the podcast, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you would like to touch on?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay, I guess we'll wrap it
Thank you
up
so
then.
much.
Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful Saturday. Thank you for watching, viewing, liking, subscribing. If you need a coach, we got Tayler. Hit her up. Everything's in the link below. And until next time, peace.
Peace. That's a wrap.
Yay.
Hey.
That was so fun. I forgot that we were recording.